Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and woohoo, I've got the new hard drive in, and it's doing very well. I'm still installing a bunch of, different things that I have to have on here, the programs, but it is working a lot better, and my editing program as of now is working like it should, so that takes a lot of stress off of me. There may still be some sound because unfortunately the fan is still pretty loud and you can probably hear that coming through. I apologize for that, and I may have to look into getting that fixed as well. But for now, yay, I'm back up and running. So anyway, I wanted to share this with you about General Flynn. Now, this is going to be an unedited video, so I also apologize for stumbling and everything and not cutting stuff out, but I need to get it up tonight, and I'm kind of short on time, so yeah, I have a brother getting married tomorrow, so I want to make sure that I get this out and done so I can get it to bed tonight. So anyway, this particular thing is about Flynn. Now, you know that Flynn is one of my favorite topics because I've had videos on him before, and he plays an important role in all of this, and I don't think we'll quite understand his full role until this is all done. But I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into some of the stuff he's doing tonight. When I first saw this, I thought, okay, update on the General Flynn case. And this was dated May 16th. And I thought, well, that's kind of like old because look at what it says here. Sentencing December 18th, 2018. And I thought, wow, that's really odd. That was back in December when that happened. But no, this document is actually current and came out just recently. You can see the USA Today is where it came from. And it actually has some kind of interesting stuff in it. It's different than some of the other things that I've come across with him, but I think it's one that maybe you'll want to look at a little closer. And so here's the document itself, but before I do that, I want to remind you of his plea deal originally. This was November 30th, 2017, and this was the plea deal that he made. And I'm going to take you down to page 5. There's 10 pages. But I'm going to take you down to page 5. Let me do it the fast way here. And I want to show you what it says under Part 8, Cooperation. Because this is kind of an important thing. If you haven't seen my other videos, you may not be aware of this. But it says your client shall cooperate fully, truthfully, completely, and forthrightly with this office and other federal, state, and local law enforcement authorities identified by this office in any and all matters as to which this office deems the cooperation relevant. Your client acknowledges that your client's cooperation may include, but will not necessarily be limited to, answering questions, providing sworn written statements, taking government-administered polygraph examinations, and, check this one out, participating in covert law enforcement activities. And for those of you who may follow that 17th letter of the alphabet, you probably understand that very well because, yeah, he's been participating in covert law enforcement activities. Any refusal by your client to cooperate fully, truthfully, completely, and forthrightly as directed in this office and other federal, state, and local law enforcement authorities identified by this office in any and all matters in which this office deems your client's assistance relevant will constitute a breach of this agreement by your client and will relieve this office of its obligations under this agreement. So anyway, that's, it goes on from there. It's kind of a standard plea deal from what I understand. But this part in here, and it's not necessarily that other people don't have this, but I think this is a very important point with him participating in covert law enforcement activities. And so there was an article, this article in the Federalist, and this was back in, where is it? February 19th, 2018. And so it was after, his plea deal, which was in November of 2017. And this was pointing out that it's very possible that if they didn't give all the information possible that might exonerate Flynn, he could get off. He could change his plea. Where is it? It's down here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, the Supreme Court has never addressed the question of whether a defendant may withdraw a guilty plea if the prosecution withholds exculpatory evidence during plea negotiations. So it's possible, and Sullivan was the judge that was looking over this, and he had an order that the Mueller people were supposed to make sure that they produced any exculpatory evidence they had about Flynn. So if they held anything back, then that means that Flynn could change his plea still, even still. And this article right here, which was from December 13th, 2018, this was pointing out John Solomon had this article. He said the DIA holds document to exonerate General Flynn, but they refuse to release it. Now, I can see two possibilities on this. And one of them is that they were the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency. And Flynn was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency from, I think it was 2012 to 2014. And he got in Obama's bad graces, and Obama went through a period of time where he was trying to purge all of the upper levels of the military that were conservatives. And so he kind of made up some bogus charges against Flynn, and yeah, they put that out there, and he ended up retiring. And really, his retirement, the guy that spoke as his retirement was Mike Rogers, by the way, Admiral Mike Rogers. And that was very interesting because the two of them are very good friends. And again, if you happen to follow that letter of the alphabet, you understand these two men are good friends, and that's how a lot of things got going, because they both are honest and godly men, and they understood the corruption that they were facing. But anyway, this particular evidence, it is possible that Flynn has not accepted the out that he was given. I mean, he had a few different times where he could have said, that he wanted to change his plea, and he probably could have gotten off, but he didn't do that. And I think one of the reasons is what I'm going to show you in a minute. As for what he was working with, remember participating in covert law enforcement activities? Yep. But anyway, look what John Solomon says here. Let me say this about Mike Flynn. In May 2017, there was a document identified to a small number of people in the United States government. It is in the possession of the Defense Intelligence Agency. For 18 months, there's been an effort to resist declassifying that document. There's a key word, declassifying. Yeah, that document. I know that document contains extraordinary exculpatory information about General Flynn. I don't believe the president has ever been told about this document. Well, that's possible, but I think Trump knows a lot of things, and so it's very possible that he knows about it. One lawmaker discovered it, but he was thwarted by the Defense Intelligence Agency in his ability to disclose it. I think we all should ask for that declassification. Get that out. It may enlighten the judge. Okay, so if it needs to be declassified, is it possible that Trump is going to declassify it when he does all the other declassification for everything else? And that really is the end of the article. And, so this was the clip that had it in there. But anyway, so is it possible that, this document is going to be part of the declassification? Yeah, it's possible, but there is a document, and it does exist. I don't know who the lawmaker is that actually, knows about it and has tried to get it declassified. Could be Nunes, could be Goodlatte, could be Graham, could be a lot of people. Grassley's in on that too. Who knows who it was, but somebody knows about it and knows that it exists. And I don't know what it is. Is Flynn, has he been working in some covert operation to begin with? Because sometimes they do those operations, the military and all those people, they do that kind of stuff where they're undercover, kind of, and it may look like they're doing something wrong, but they have this letter that's going to exonerate them in the long run, you know. So I don't know if that's the situation. I don't know if Flynn has willingly continued on with this for the reason that I'm going to show you right now. It's very possible. Now, this is the document that was mentioned here, you know, in this tweet. And as always, all these links will be down below so you can read the stuff for yourself. This is 7 pages long, and I'll just try to hit the highlights in it. But basically, he was supposed to be sentenced a long time ago. And every time he came up for sentencing, it was like, well, no, there's a reason why he's not sentenced this time. We'll postpone it. And it just kept getting postponed and postponed. And so, you know, kind of interesting. Remember, it was Mueller's team that did this. They were the ones that put out that Flynn was guilty. So they're the ones that indicted him. Now, I need you to understand, too, on this, the signature at the bottom is respectfully submitted, Robert S. Mueller III, Special Counsel. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a view as to, you know, the point of view of this. And so what is this document all about? Whoops, I went back one too many. This document is an addendum to government's memorandum in aid of sentencing. And basically, it goes through and it says this memorandum describes the significance and usefulness of defendant Michael T. Flynn's assistance to the government and the timeliness of that assistance. As described herein, the defendant's assistance to the government was substantial and merits consideration at sentencing. So this entire document is pretty much Mueller saying, look, the guy cooperated with us and he helped us in a lot of ways, so go easy on him when you sentence him. Now, my personal opinion is I don't want Flynn pardoned, okay? I don't want Flynn sentenced. I want Flynn totally exonerated, okay? I want everything expunged, you know? He is a hero, and it will come out eventually that he was a hero. But at this point, you know, there were things that he did that I think he did, I want to say almost on purpose, so that everything else could be put into play. And so it's part of a big plan and kind of complex. It's a little hard for me to explain everything here, but they needed him to be able to testify. And I think if he would have continued on in his position as the National Security Advisor, which is what he was, I don't think he would have been in a position to be able to testify like he did. And so, you know, there were several instances, and they go through, that's what this whole thing is. It goes through and it talks about, you know, the defendant has assisted with several ongoing investigations, a criminal investigation in the Eastern District of Virginia that is likely to result in criminal charges, the Special Counsel's Office, the SCO, investigation concerning any links or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the campaign of President Donald J. Trump. And as part of his assistance with these investigations, the defendant participated in 19 interviews with the SCO or attorneys from other Department of Justice offices, provided documents and communications, and then, you know, redactions. We got some redactions here. While this addendum seeks to provide a comprehensive description of the benefit of government has thus far obtained from the defendant's substantial assistance, some of that benefit may not be fully realized at this time because the investigations in which he has provided assistance are ongoing. Now, I need to point that out to you. They're ongoing. Now, remember also with Mueller's report, the things that are redacted are grand jury information, so that means they're ongoing. So there's lots of ongoing things that are happening still coming out of this. None of it has to do with Trump and collusion, okay? None of it. None of it has to do with anybody in his campaign who was involved in Russian collusion, okay? That has been laid to rest by the Mueller investigation. What that does mean, though, is there are some people still involved in some ongoing investigations. What those ongoing investigations are, we don't know. And that's because they're probably not going to be in favor of the deep state. Because you see, Weissman was part of all this, right? Well, if Weissman wanted that information out because it would make Trump look bad, he'd have put it out. They were leaking like crazy as long as it was leaking something to make Trump look bad. But if it's not something to make Trump look bad, they're not leaking it. And since this has not been leaked, what these grand jury investigations are about, I'm kind of thinking that they are not positive for the deep state. So anyway, it goes on and talks about, this criminal investigation of this guy right here and this guy and somebody else, and being conducted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia. And it has to do with the FARA, Foreign Agents Registration Act. And so there was some of that. And it also has a Turkey connection. Now, I'm not sure how all this fits in, but that's what Flynn was accused of. He was working supposedly as a foreign agent with Turkey, and that caused him to have a FARA violation. But again, I kind of wonder if this is not a covert operation that he's been working on, and this document that's at the DIA, I think probably has, the information in it that will show that this was an operation he was working on and he won't be guilty then because of it. At least that's what I'm hoping. I don't know for sure, but and then there's a bunch that's redacted here. And then it goes on and he was helping Mueller. The defendant has also assisted with the SCO investigation concerning links or coordination between the Russian government and individuals associated with the Trump campaign. Now keep in mind, Mueller is writing this, but Mueller also said that Trump and his people on his campaign had no connections, no collusion with Russia. So that was the conclusion they made. And if he says here that Flynn was helping them and concerning the links and the coordination, then what was Flynn telling them? Well, Flynn was obviously telling them things that proved that there was no collusion. So I think he was testifying, for Trump. So in some ways, he was like like an insertion in there, kind of the person in there to defend Trump. So I think that, and then they talk here about the WikiLeaks. I thought it was very interesting that when they talk about the WikiLeaks, not here, but later on, they talk about how it came about, and they don't say that they say that they were stolen. Well, yes, they were not hacked. Okay, they don't say they were hacked. They said they were stolen documents. And I thought that was an interesting choice of words, because that kind of indicates more of the Seth Rich narrative than it does the Russian, hacking narrative. Anyway, a non-exhaustive summary of the relevant information the defendant provided is described below to aid the court's assessment of the defendant's assistance. And so interactions between the transition team and Russia, he provided firsthand information about the content and context of interactions between the transition team and Russian government officials. So content and context. So in other words, he was setting the record straight. I think that's why he was put in there, so he could set the record straight, when they were all testifying, and they could say, well, it looked pretty shady about such and such. And I think Flynn came in and said, no, this is the context. This is what it was. This is what happened. So I don't know that for sure, but that's what I kind of get a feel from reading this. That's my impression on it. And so, for example, After the election, the defendant communicated with the Russian ambassador to the United States as a representative of the transition team on two sensitive matters: a United States Security Council vote on resolution calling for Israel to cease settlement activities in Palestinian territory, and the Obama administration's imposition of sanctions and other measures on Russia for interfering in the 2016 election. Several senior members of the transition team publicly repeated false information conveyed to them by the defendant about communications between him and the Russian ambassador regarding the sanctions. So the defendant provided details on which transition team officials he conferred with before communicating with the Russian ambassador, who on the transition team was aware the communications were occurring, and who on the transition team was informed about what he and the Russian ambassador discussed. So, it was giving his perspective on this, and he was an insider, so he had very important perspective to kind of set the record straight. So, WikiLeaks release of emails during the presidential campaign, this section here, here's where it was talking about it, and it says, on July 22nd, 2016, WikiLeaks released emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee. Notice it says stolen. It says no mention of hacked here, even though, these were emails stolen from John Podesta. Now, I'm not saying that, totally rules out the whole hacking thing, but I just thought it was an interesting choice of words there instead of using the term hacking, which they used in the actual Mueller report. But remember, Mueller didn't write the Mueller report. He may have oversaw it, but I'm pretty sure that Weissman was the one to do that. And then it goes on, potential efforts to interfere with the special counsel's office's investigation. The defendant assisted the SCO's investigation into potential efforts to interfere with or otherwise obstruct its investigation. And notice how that says it too. It doesn't say potential efforts by the president or by it doesn't mention who, to interfere. And, the ODAG, that's the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. So that was Rosenstein's office. And the defendant informed the government of multiple instances, both before and after his guilty plea, where either he or his attorneys received communications from persons connected to the administration or Congress that could have affected both his willingness to cooperate and the completeness of that cooperation. The defendant even provided a voicemail recording of one such communication. In some of those instances, the SCO was unaware of the outreach until being alerted to it by the defendant. So, see, Flynn was telling them, hey, I had people that were trying to get me to change what I was going to say. Now, once again, Flynn would not be turning on Trump. He's not going to say anything bad about Trump because he was all for Trump, okay? So, who was this? And notice it says they were connected to the administration or Congress. I think it's very interesting. So, was he turning in dirt on some deep staters who were trying to pressure him to testify differently? I don't know. And then this is all redacted here, so I wonder if this is an expansion on that. Not sure. And, the timeliness of his assistance. The usefulness of the defendant's assistance is connected to its timeliness. The defendant began providing information to the government not long after the government first sought his cooperation. And so that's right, with his plea deal. His early cooperation was particularly valuable because he was one of few people with long-term and first-hand insight regarding events and issues under investigation by the SCO. So, it just goes on and says, he was cooperating and everything. And so I think probably what the deal is that, Mueller, and really Mueller himself is the one who wrote this, and he did it once before too. He kind of wrote something nice about Flynn in order to, affect how the sentencing was going to go. And so it's really been kind of odd that Mueller has been supporting Flynn in all of this, in especially with Flynn's testimony and everything that he's been saying. So, I don't know what the deal is, and I don't know why Flynn is not being, sentenced, but I'm glad he's not, because I really do think that after everything's declassified, maybe that document will be in there and he'll be exonerated too in it. But yeah, this came out 5/16/19, so that's what it is. And so that's what I've got for you. As I said, I'll put all these links down below, and you'll be able to read his plea agreement, if the whole thing, if you want to. But really, this section 8 here on page 5, the cooperation, that's the really important part. And I do think that this participating in covert law enforcement activities is part of what he was doing. I think that's an important part. And so that's one of the reasons why Flynn has not been sentenced. It's also one of the reasons why I think it took so long for all of this to happen, and especially the Mueller report. Why did it take Mueller so long to put it out? Well, in my opinion, and this is just opinion, but in my opinion, I think the reason it's taken so long is because they needed to put together all these cases for people that were part of the real obstruction and part of this whole Russian hoax, So there were a lot of people involved. And I think when we find out, it's just going to be the start of everything, because there are so many that it's going to lead to, one thing's going to lead to another, to another. It's like dominoes, and they're all going to start falling. So hang in there, folks, because it is coming soon. Like I said in my last video, I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen, right away, because there does have to be this period of time where they review it and they go over the IG report. But things will be happening. Things will be coming out. And as DeGenova said in an interview I just saw him do on Ingram, I really think, it's finally time that these people aren't going to walk away. They will actually be indicted for it. So I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. And so we have something to look forward to. And it's not that I'm happy that people are going to be indicted. I'm happy that we are finally restoring the rule of law in our country. And people that have big names, just because they have big names, doesn't mean that they get off automatically. So those who have been thinking they were too big to jail, well, I think their time is up. And really watch them, because you're seeing a lot of these people, especially Brennan and Comey right now, are really going at it. And it's, a little bit of internal fighting there, because, they're almost pointing fingers at each other going, you started it. No, you started it. You started it. They were working together. Okay. And so when we find all this out, I'm sure all of us are going to go, wow, I can't believe this was happening in our country. But yeah, it was, wasn't it? Well, and the only thing that's going to really make an impact so things like this don't happen again is if there are convictions. And that's what we have to keep looking forward to, because that's what's going to change things. So that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.